Welcome back, and thank you for joining us once again. Tonight, we explore the story of a man who was never supposed to become a samurai. Born a farmer in 16th-century Japan, he had no title, no wealth, and no path to power. Yet somehow, he would rise through one of the most rigid societies in history, command armies, and help shape the future of an entire nation. How did a farmer's son achieve what seemed impossible? His name was Toyotomi Hideyoshi. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and join us for more remarkable stories from history. Toyotomi Hideyoshi was born around 1537 during one of the most chaotic periods in Japanese history. The era is now known as the Sengoku period, often translated as the Warring States period. Japan was not a unified country. It was a patchwork of rival domains controlled by powerful warlords known as daimyo. Alliances shifted constantly. Wars erupted without warning. Castles changed hands. Ambitious men rose and fell with astonishing speed. It was an age of opportunity. But mostly for the powerful. Not for peasants. Hideyoshi's early life remains partly mysterious. Historical records from his childhood are limited, which was common for someone born outside the nobility. Most historians believe his father was a peasant and possibly a low-ranking foot soldier. Whatever the exact details, one thing is clear. Hideyoshi was born far from privilege. Unlike samurai families who carefully preserved records of ancestry, peasants often left little trace in official history. No one at the time could have imagined that future generations would one day study the life of this farmer's son. Descriptions of Hideyoshi suggest he looked different from the ideal image of a warrior. Contemporary accounts often portrayed him as physically unimpressive. He was relatively short. His features lacked the aristocratic elegance admired among many samurai. Some rivals mocked his appearance openly. One insulting nickname compared him to a monkey. Yet Hideyoshi possessed something far more valuable than physical appearance. He understood people. As a young man, Hideyoshi reportedly left home and searched for opportunity beyond farming. Japan's endless wars created pathways for ambitious individuals willing to take risks. Eventually, he entered the service of a rising warlord whose name would become legendary. Oda Nobunaga. At the time, Nobunaga was not yet the dominant figure history remembers. He was one ambitious lord among many. But Hideyoshi saw potential. And more importantly, Nobunaga eventually saw potential in Hideyoshi. According to popular stories, Hideyoshi began in humble positions. Some accounts claim he worked as a sandal-bearer, responsible for carrying his lord's footwear. Historians debate certain details of these stories because many were written years later and may contain embellishments. Yet the broader truth remains clear. Hideyoshi entered service at the bottom. He was not handed command. He earned it. What separated Hideyoshi from countless other retainers was his ability to solve problems. He noticed details others ignored. He completed tasks efficiently. And he consistently exceeded expectations. Nobunaga valued competence more than tradition. In a society obsessed with status and lineage, that attitude created opportunities. Hideyoshi seized every one of them. One famous story illustrates his reputation. At a castle construction project, workers struggled with logistical challenges and delays. Hideyoshi reportedly organized resources so effectively that the work progressed with remarkable speed. Whether every detail survives accurately is difficult to know. But many historical accounts agree on the larger point. Hideyoshi repeatedly impressed superiors through practical intelligence. He was not the strongest warrior. He was often the smartest organizer in the room. As years passed, Nobunaga's power expanded. Campaign after campaign increased his influence across Japan. And with each success, Hideyoshi rose higher. He became a commander. Then a major general. Then one of Nobunaga's most trusted subordinates. For a man born a peasant, the achievement was extraordinary. Many samurai spent their entire lives serving beneath noble families. Hideyoshi had entered their world from outside it. And he was climbing rapidly. The battles of the Sengoku period were brutal and relentless. Castles dominated strategic landscapes. Victory often depended as much on logistics and diplomacy as battlefield courage. Hideyoshi excelled at both. He negotiated alliances, managed supplies, built infrastructure, and when necessary, led military campaigns. His reputation grew steadily. Not because he won every battle, but because he consistently delivered results. Then history changed suddenly. In 1582, Oda Nobunaga was betrayed by one of his own generals, Akechi Mitsuhide. Surrounded and facing defeat at the Honnoji incident, Nobunaga died. The event shocked Japan. The most powerful warlord in the country was gone. And whenever a powerful ruler dies unexpectedly, chaos follows. Many assumed Nobunaga's coalition would collapse. They underestimated Hideyoshi. At the time of Nobunaga's death, Hideyoshi was conducting military operations far from the capital. When news reached him, he acted with astonishing speed. He negotiated a temporary peace with enemies, turned his army around, and marched toward Mitsuhide before rivals could react. The response became legendary. Within days, Hideyoshi confronted the traitor responsible for Nobunaga's death. At the Battle of Yamazaki, Mitsuhide was defeated. The man who betrayed Nobunaga lost everything. Hideyoshi emerged as the avenger of his fallen lord. And suddenly, his influence exploded. Yet military victory alone could not secure power. Japan's leading generals all possessed prestigious family backgrounds. Hideyoshi did not. Many viewed him as an outsider. A peasant who had climbed too high. His challenge became political as much as military. How could a man without noble ancestry rule a nation obsessed with lineage? The answer revealed his greatest strength: adaptability. Rather than claiming the title of shogun, a position traditionally tied to specific aristocratic bloodlines, Hideyoshi pursued alternative paths to legitimacy. Through careful political maneuvering, imperial recognition, and strategic alliances, he accumulated authority piece by piece. Eventually, he received the surname Toyotomi from the emperor himself. The symbolic significance was enormous. The farmer's son now stood among the highest ranks of Japanese society. Over the following years, Hideyoshi continued the work Nobunaga had begun. One by one, rival warlords submitted or were defeated. Major campaigns expanded his influence across the Japanese islands. Negotiation often accompanied military pressure. Some domains surrendered peacefully. Others resisted. But the overall trend became impossible to ignore. Japan was moving toward unification. And Hideyoshi stood at the center of that transformation. One of his most famous campaigns targeted the powerful Hojo clan. The siege of Odawara in 1590 demonstrated the scale of his power. Hideyoshi assembled a massive force and surrounded one of the strongest fortresses in Japan. Yet rather than relying solely on violence, he combined military pressure with psychological strategy. He reportedly transformed parts of the siege camp into a place of entertainment and confidence, signaling that his victory was inevitable. Eventually, the Hojo surrendered. The last major obstacle to unification disappeared. For the first time in generations, Japan stood largely united. The achievement was remarkable. A nation fragmented by more than a century of warfare had been brought together. And the man responsible began life as a farmer. Few stories in world history rival that rise. Yet success brought new challenges. Hideyoshi understood the social mobility that made his own career possible. Ironically, he spent much of his later rule limiting it. One famous policy became known as the sword hunt. Weapons were collected from peasants throughout the country. The official justification focused on stability and preventing rebellion. But the policy also reinforced social divisions. Farmers would remain farmers. Samurai would remain samurai. The ladder Hideyoshi climbed became harder for others to use. Historians continue debating this contradiction. Perhaps he feared renewed chaos. Perhaps he understood how fragile peace remained. Perhaps both explanations contain truth. Hideyoshi also launched ambitious projects. Castles rose. Infrastructure improved. Trade expanded. Cultural achievements flourished. His government helped stabilize regions that had known little but warfare for generations. At the same time, some decisions proved controversial. Most notably, his invasions of Korea beginning in 1592. The campaigns consumed enormous resources and failed to achieve their ultimate objectives. They remain among the most debated aspects of his legacy. By the late 1590s, Hideyoshi had become one of the most powerful individuals in East Asia. Foreign envoys negotiated with him. Daimyo obeyed him. The emperor recognized him. The peasant child who once watched samurai ride past now commanded the loyalty of thousands of them. It was an ascent almost without precedent. Hideyoshi died in 1598. His final years were marked by concerns about succession and the future stability of Japan. Those concerns proved justified. After his death, political struggles resumed. Eventually, Tokugawa Ieyasu emerged victorious and established the Tokugawa shogunate, which would govern Japan for more than 2 centuries. Yet even Ieyasu built upon foundations that Hideyoshi helped create. The unification of Japan was not the achievement of one man alone. But Hideyoshi played an indispensable role. Today, Toyotomi Hideyoshi remains one of the most fascinating figures in Japanese history. Not because he was perfect. Historians continue debating aspects of his rule, his policies, and his military decisions. Like all major historical figures, his legacy contains both achievements and contradictions. But one fact remains extraordinary. He began life as a farmer's son in a society where birth largely determined destiny. And he rose to become the ruler of a nation. The samurai who once looked down upon peasants could never have imagined it. The nobles who measured worth through ancestry could never have predicted it. The boy standing barefoot in the mud could never have seen the full path ahead. Yet somehow, through intelligence, ambition, adaptability, and relentless determination, Toyotomi Hideyoshi accomplished what almost everyone believed impossible. And that is why history remembers him. Not merely as a ruler. Not merely as a general. But as the farmer who became the master of Japan.